No Wi-Fi at all, or only this?
We're live. It says we're live.
Mine says off air. Oh, now it says live. Okay, good morning. Thank you for coming to day 2 of Cycle 16. It's bright and early at 10 in the morning-ish here in Lithuania, and we have lessons, and I wanted to remind people that I try to put introductory lessons in the morning so that if people wanted to sleep in, who've already heard Papa Lobo stories before, they have that option. And this morning we're going to talk about Business 101, some basics. And obviously there's lots of different kinds of business, ways of doing business. It's not possible in one lecture to tell everybody everything they need to know about business. So in bearing in mind the cycle idea of breaking chains and freeing your mind from things that hold you back, amongst the basic business principles, what I want kinds of things that are roadblocks for people, things that get in the way of people getting into business and being successful in business. So I don't often use PowerPoints, but since not everybody is here and I can't just write on the whiteboard, I do have a PowerPoint. And if you'll bear with me, folks, I will try to bring it up here. You can share it with us. Okay, here we go. Business 101 says what they didn't tell you in business school. Not everybody's been to business school, but this is very much what Cycle is about. We like to fill in the gaps, and we love the bullshit because there's plenty of it out there. I have another talk about money, so I'm not going to get too much into detail about money. But if you're going to go into business, you cannot have this attitude that money is the root of all evil. If that's the way you think, you're not going to be successful. How can you be successful accumulating something that you think is bad for you? So very quickly, to make money, what you do is make money. The Rich Dad, Poor Dad author, Kiyosaki, has a funny story of his father telling him when he was a boy. He took it literally. He made plaster casts of nickels. And he poured into the cast, but he made nickels in his garage and painted them silver out of whatever it was he made of them. And so he literally made his own money. And then his father had this was counterfeiting and could get him in jail. Expression, make money, it's a misleading expression, make money. Nobody besides governments these days actually make money. In the real world, miners make money by digging it out of the earth. And even they don't make it, they just pure. But what we mean by making money is to create value and trade it with others in exchange for value, which usually comes in the form of money, whatever money is today. So it's an important thing here. I'm not just, if you think I need to make money, well, how do you do that? It's actually a paralyzing phrase. You get a job. It's not very helpful. But if you understand that the basic value and then exchange it with others, that's a very liberating idea. You can do things, you can create value. And to the degree that you do, money is the measure of the value we've created. This is a wonderful thing. Instead of money showing that you're a filthy, stinking, rich, evil bastard, your money, assuming you didn't steal it, assuming you're not a politician who used the force of government to steal it from others, if you have money, it's because you did something valuable, even if that was just flipping a hamburger or if it was creating a business. You did something valuable, and other people voluntarily gave you their money in exchange for that. So your money is a measure of the value you've created. This is a wonderful thing. The opposite is this idea, give me a job, please. And think about those words too. Give me a job, not exchange value for this value I've created. Give me, you're basically a beggar at that point. And it's up to the other person's pleasure. If you please. That's where please comes from. Where does that word please come? If you please. It's short for if you please. If it pleases you, it puts you in a subordinate. It doesn't need to be that way. In the market, we're all traders. And if you have the idea that I can create value and trade it with others, it's a very different bargaining position than if you please, give me a job. That is a mental chain. It will hold you back. You can and should break that chain and think of terms of creating value. And that makes you a creator. You're not evil. You're not Snidely Whiplash who ties the girls to the railroad tracks on weekends for fun. going around evicting people just for the blah, ha, ha. But you're a creator. You could good thing. So more on money later, but this is essential. You can't have a negative attitude about money if you're going to go into business. All right, so the title of the talk was Shift Happens. And I think it's important for people who haven't already grasped some of the things we'll be talking about to shift their thinking into a higher gear about business. And as I mentioned, please give me a job is sort of the lowest starting point. And sometimes bills to pay, or you haven't come up with your idea yet, you haven't thought of an effective way to create it. And at the very least, what you have at this point is your body, your time, which you can trade with others. This is what a job is. You take your time and your effort and you trade it with others, your time for their money. That's being a worker. And I put this at the bottom. We're not reading this slide from top to bottom. I put it at the bottom because I think of this as a hierarchy, the wealth hierarchy. And being a worker, having a job, is the slowest path towards any kind of wealth. And I would even argue that it's not a path towards accumulating any money at all. Even the highest paid employees in the world, people who work for other people, never make as much money as those they work for. And some of the highest paid jobs in the world are like tax attorney and some of these specialties where somebody who's really good at doing this one thing can get a regular pay for doing what they do. But even those jobs typically are limited to 6 figures as an employee. If you want to break through to real wealth at the higher end of the spectrum, you can't just be a worker. You have to be a creator. So above worker in my hierarchy is owner. If you own the business, then you get to collect all the profits you want. Now, of course, if you ever studied business or had a business, you know that being the owner is it's not easy. Yes, you get all the profits of the business, but you're responsible for it and you have to pay all the bills. And if anything goes wrong, you're the one who gets dragged out of bed at 3 in the morning to put out the fire to take care of the business. So ownership is a glorious thing, and it certainly is a much better path to wealth creation than just being a worker bee. But it is a lot of work. There's an easier way, and there's a form of sort of transmuted ownership, and we call that being an investor. When you're an investor in a company, you have an ownership stake in the company, but you're usually not the manager. You have deployed your capital into a business idea that you like, you believe in, but that has other people waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning when the fire alarm goes off or whatever happens. So an investor is not only a more comfortable place, it's a more powerful place because you can devote your time not just to running the business on a day-to-day basis of whatever this business idea is, you can devote your time also to looking for other investments, other businesses. And this is a great thing because it's a more direct employing of your intellectual capital to transform financial capital. And the other thing that it's good at, or a reason why it's like strategically and tactically a good idea to be an investor, is because if you're CEO of a company, you're very focused on that one company. This is where your day and night, what you think about, what you do, it's who you are almost. And that's putting all of your effort into one thing. And if a regulation comes along and destroys your business, you're no longer the owner of a valuable, profitable enterprise. So it is better to be a business owner or a CEO than an employee in terms of the wealth hierarchy that I'm describing, but it's even better to be an investor. It's a more powerful and more tactically advantageous situation. And I put at the top of my hierarchy speculator. Those evil speculators, you hear about them in the news all the time. Oh, oil has gone up. It's because of those evil speculators. Or, oh, oil has gone down. It's because of those evil speculators. Well, I don't think speculation is evil. A speculator doesn't create distortions in the marketplace of prices rising and falling. He or she identifies those and takes advantage of them. In fact, the main creator of distortions in the marketplace is the government. They come up with new regulations, they change the rules, they bugger the interest rates, who knows what interest rates, yay! An economy is so bad, we're going to punish them. We're going to pay them for borrowing. These are scary times. A speculator sees this, and a speculator is a kind of investor who sees the changes, sees what's going on, and invests in a speculative way to benefit from that. Now, the reason why I put this on the top is because remember the job safety hierarchy. This wasn't the Mother Teresa hierarchy of how to make friends. This is the wealth hierarchy. I think business-wise, investor is pretty much the top. But if the purpose is money making, if you want to make a lot of money, you have to go beyond being an investor and become a speculator. And I would even say that if you don't think about speculation, you're actually, and you're opening yourself up to risk. Because what the speculator does is actually, he looks or she looks for risks or changes and tries to capitalize on the opportunities that those things can bring. As an investor, you're very focused on, this is a good business idea, we keep going. And many businesses are good until they're not. So it's important, I think, if you're thinking higher up in the spectrum, as high as you can or are willing to go. One size doesn't fit all. Again, just out of university and you need to get a job to take care of things. I'm not criticizing that. Or if you're a 60-year-old ex-CEO and you have to get a job just to take care of things, I'm not criticizing that. We all have to do what we have to do. But I think this is a useful tool to keep in mind. If you want to make money, if you want to create value and be rewarded with accumulated money, this hierarchy will help keep your mind focused on prioritizing your opportunities. That's basically what I'm saying. In my introductory talk, we talked about intellectual capital, so I won't beat this too much to death. But it is worth stressing that whatever your situation is, whatever your net worth is, you could be a billionaire, or you could be like Donald Trump. Sometimes he's a billionaire, sometimes he's an anti-billionaire. His net worth vacillates between hugely positive and hugely negative, depending on how his adventures go. Financial capital is important, but Marx's focus on capital, I think, was wrong-headed. And it's important for people just starting out to understand that it's only one kind of capital, have intellectual capital. And this can easily be translated into other kinds of capital. It can be translated into emotional and friend capital. It can be translated into financial capital. I told some stories yesterday. And for those who are just tuning in, those stories, I won't repeat them. I'll just remind you that the Technical Writers International story was my first business, which I literally started with $35. And I was able to feed years with that business. The Mir story is another intellectual capital to financial capital story that I like a lot. It's only partly my story. Mir is a town in Belarus where there's a very nice castle. It's a sort of late medieval Renaissance era castle. And for a long time, and particularly under the Soviets, it was pretty neglected. The town is very small. It has maybe 3,000 inhabitants. And I went there one day and I saw this castle. It was really cool. And there was nobody there. The government has now cleaned it up and made more of an attraction. There was this really awesome castle in the middle of the forest with no tourists, nothing there, in this little town. And the town was so small, it had only like 2 cafes and 1 hotel with 2 bedrooms. There was no tourist facility there at all. I said, that's an opportunity. That's really cool. Here's a historic landmark with no infrastructure around it. And it's only an hour from the capital. It's got a decent highway, actually. You go right out the main road to Moscow and at Mir. So this was all part of awareness, but it wasn't actually my idea to invest in this. One of my students who listened to my Papa Lobo stories about intellectual capital has family in Mir. And they found a piece of land that was for sale. And this piece of land was literally right in front of the castle gates. I mean, you came out of the main castle gate, you went through the portcullis and the fence and the road, you crossed and this piece of property was right there. And it had a beat-up, falling apart little Belarusian village house on it. It was an eyesore. It was like a almost an empty lot. It was overgrown, the thing was collapsing, it was ugly to look at. Doesn't matter. In real estate, people say, what do they say about real estate? Number one, location, location, location. Thank you, brother. Being religious here. Location, this thing was right in front of the castle, and it was falling apart. And I would never have been able, if I had searched for an opportunity in me, if I had gone there and seen the opportunity I just described to you, I had gone online. But my student who had family there, knew people, and it was turned out that who owned this thing and didn't live there anymore was interested in selling. And so we got together a deal and we bought the property. And it turned out there was another piece of property right next to it that was available. And we bought that too and added it. And the entire capital for all this, prime little patch of real estate, 18 sotuk of land in a dilapidated Belarusian village house, was $31,000 for all of this. Can you imagine buying a piece of land, postage stamp, in front of Buckingham Palace or the Eiffel Tower or something? It's unimaginable, the kind of scale here. But this is how opportunities are found. So I didn't find the opportunity, but I had the mental awareness of the situation. And a student brought this to me. I put the money in. We bought the land. We had difficulties. I wanted to build something nice there. I thought we could build a little cafe, maybe a bed and breakfast right in front of the castle. It would be someplace I could go and stay when I visit Belarus, and it would generate a little bit of income. It would be fun. But then we ran into government. And no, you can't build big. It has to be the same style as the house that was there before. In fact, you can't even knock down the old house. You can only renovate it. All these kinds of troubles. So no fun. So we decided to sell. And again, my Belarusian partners put out the word, and they found the right kind of advertising venues. In the end, it turned out to be Russian investors who were interested in this sort of thing, and maybe had more, what's the capital I'm thinking of? Not political capital, maybe political capital to influence the town hall, maybe, about what was permitted on this land. But anyway, we found some other people interested in such an opportunity, and we were able to sell the property for pretty much twice, almost twice what we bought it for. So close to 100% profit. And this was based on one of my former students' intellectual capital. What they had was an idea. I had the money, we put it together, and we both created value. And we were rewarded for that. So this is another, you don't have to be Papa Lobo. All you have to have is a really good idea. The Papa Vova story is, Papa Vova is the father of another one of my students, and he had a trucking business and a niche market in refrigerated trucking in Belarus, and they had an idea for expanding this. And so this wasn't this really unusual idea of this really great little piece of real estate that nobody else knew about. This was a very ordinary business idea of he has a trucking business, he wants to make it big. But what he had, letters from customers, we need more transportation, and he doesn't have more trucks. His business is at capacity. And he has letters from these customers saying, we want more, and if you have more trucks, we will give you more business. And so my friend Andre, my friend and former student Andre, whose father-in-law was Papa Vova, put together a business plan. He brought the money that Papa Vova needed to buy his trucks was more than I had. My friend Doug Casey has more money than I do, and we took the business plan to Doug, and Doug liked it. So Doug Casey and I were putting the money together to invest in Papa Vova's trucking business. And unfortunately, it was right before, not right after we did, the governments changed the rules, not the Belarusian governments, the Polish and Lithuanian rules or whatever, and the whole plan for this trucking went out the window. So we didn't implement it. But again, the point of the story is that a student of mine understood this idea of, well, even if you don't have the financial capital, if you can spot an opportunity, if you can see a way to create value, if you can deploy your intellectual capital, finding the money is actually not the hardest part. And he was almost able to make this happen, and it only didn't happen because of the government. So these are small Papa Lobo type stories, but we're all familiar with big stories. You know, the whole startup idea, the whole Silicon Valley phenomenon, famous IT startups. These IT nerds, you know, the Asperger syndrome computer geek, that's the stereotype. Not everybody's like that. But think about what that stereotype tells us. These people do not start out as of trillionaires. They just start out as nerds, which means people who rejoice in intellectual capital, people who understand computers or the programming languages. And they have turned their knowledge, their intellectual capital, into literally billions of dollars. So don't underestimate your... I have another talk about business plans, so I'm not going to go into business plans in detail today. We'll come back to this subject because it's a big subject. There are a lot of areas we can get into. But it's important to understand that the business plan is like the key to your kingdom. It's the key that you start a motor with. You don't go anywhere without this business plan at first. And if you're a Lobo story, you know, they came to me with a business plan and it worked. So you have to be serious about a business plan. There are stories and movies about a business plan written in a bar on the back of a cocktail napkin and just your brilliance persuading people. You need to have a well thought out, powerful business plan. It needs to be professional. You're going into business. You want to deal with professionals. You need to be professional. We'll talk more about that later. I just want to say that the business plan is key. So we want to make money. We want to create value. We want to become wealthier. What is a good business? How, you know, between any business or the business we want to be in. Am I okay, Grace? Okay. What is a good business? So in my mind, the key to what makes for a good business, we've talked about creating value, is a good business is something that adds scalable value. Now, if you live in a small village in China somewhere and there's no cafe, well, maybe building a cafe in this village is a great business idea of a kind. You know, it's not there. Like my story about Mir, there was no hotel there. But if you remember my story about Mir, I was not really in it for big money. I was in it because I wanted a place in Belarus. It would be fun. I could make a little money maybe and have a place to stay. So I had different goals there. But the little cafe, village cafe somewhere in the mountains of China, it's not scalable. It could be valuable to that location, but you can't cookie cutter it. You can't copy it. You can't multiply it. Multiplying is very valuable. Multiplying adds to your wealth much faster than adding.
So
we will pause for a moment. I will dance. Okay. Well, I need to reload the Hangout.
I don't know if it shows. You're probably okay. And I'm not on the Liberty. I'm not able to get onto the Liberty.live page to see what people are seeing.
You were making interesting faces, so.
Yeah. So I don't even know.
So I could actually still be online right now.
I don't. But I don't have access to the.
Okay.
So I mean, I almost think I should.
I see Wi-Fi.
Are you online?
Let me verify. I am not online. I have Wi-Fi, but I do not have internet.
It says we have viewers, but again, normally I can tell because there's people on the live page, and I can't pull it up.
Yep, I'm online now. The internet is back.
But you don't have the chat room open.
I do not have a chat room open.
Can you open it?
We use one line instead of Wi-Fi. Maybe that would be.
We don't know where the hub is, and if the problem is the whole location's connection to the internet, and not like the Wi-Fi signal is strong. It's full bars. I don't think it's the Wi-Fi. It's somewhere between here and the world. And it's very slow. It's trying to load, but it's very slow.
Usually when you don't use Wi-Fi, then you're line.
Yes, it can improve. I understand.
So I don't know if we are on or not on. Now it says we're broadcasting. I'm not sure. We try talking, and I don't know what's going on outside of this room.
I'm still trying to pull up the page. So
You may just want to look into the camera, just saying, give us a moment to check our connection.
yes, we continue to have technical difficulties. Please bear with us if you're there.
Because I have viewers going down 7, 4.
So you're actually seeing changing data.
And it tells me we're back on, but I can't confirm.
Do you see the live button on the Google Hangouts?
I do see the live
And
button.
it says we're live.
It does say we're live. But I'm not in the chat room, so I don't know what's going on.
Are you able to see anything on there?
I'm not.
You go up in person.
Let's keep talking.
Okay, yeah, this is very slow. I don't know what it's doing. Why it's doing that, but it seems to think it's online. Okay, so we are going to faith here, assume that we are not alone, and we're not going to ignore our local customers. So what is a good business? I was describing that to me, the key variable that makes something, distinguishes a good business from a business or an okay business or bad business, is that it adds scalable value. And that is that there's an opportunity to take whatever the idea is and make it big. And we'll just keep that in your mind. Along these lines, I remember reading an essay from a for-market author who was talking about how terrible competition was. And his argument was on this point. But competition is great. It does bring out the best in us. The challenge causes us to rise to the occasion. It stimulates excellence. We owe so many wonderful good things that we have in the world to the competitive spirit. Now, of course, this is goodwill competition. I'm not talking, kill your competitors kind of competition. And in fact, if you have to resort to dirty deeds and backroom deals and violence, that's an admission of failure. When you're competing with somebody, and of course, none of you would ever do this, but in history, examples where people would send out thugs to break the machines of their competitor's factory or something. That was an admission that the competitor was better than them. And frankly, I'm too proud to do that. I'm not going to admit that somebody can do the thing better than me. Until I do, I'm going to compete to do even better. So competition is great. It stimulates value creation, more specifically. I'm not the sort of person, people who know me will tell you that I'm not the sort of person who feels like I need to go around and be better than everybody else. But I like competing in the business world, knowing that I create a lot of value. And I know that I do because I get a reasonable return from it. But on the other hand, I like this gentleman's idea in the sense that it can cause you to lose focus. It can cause you to try to copy what other people are doing. It can cause you to think about the competition instead of the value creation. And to me, the answer to that is that you should always be unique. You should always be yourself. You should never let the forces of competition in the market, push you in ways you don't want to go. So competition is great. It stimulates excellence, but don't let it become like a drug addiction on your back that takes you over and turns you into this monster, this evil monster. So like many powerful tools, it can be used for creative or destructive purposes, and you're the person who gets to choose. So choose wisely. At the end of the day, it really is all about adding value. And this is actually true if you go back into my hierarchy of worker, owner, investor, spectator. It's true there too. And even as an employee, adding value. You're putting your time in, which adds value to the enterprise that you didn't create, but you're part of. And as an employee, if you add more value than they ask of you, you will find that this is the surest way to move up in that company. And it sounds kind of, crazy isn't the right word, but it sounds kind of like, it requires a bigger leap of faith than many people are willing to give. Adding value, it sounds very abstract, it sounds theoretical. But I can tell you, I have had this happen to me in my life. My job, my employers ask me, do X. And I do 2X, or how many X I could do. And my employer says, wow, you're really great. And they give me a promotion. And there's other people, well, they sit there and they do X and they do X. And they say, I've been here for 5 years and I haven't gotten a raise. What's wrong? I'm never late. I do everything that I'm told. Well, what's wrong is they didn't compete with the people who do 10X. They're not bad, but the more value you add to whatever you're doing, and by the way, this goes beyond business, the more value you will get back from the world. It's kind of funny. People think of business as being the opposite from love and peace and all these wonderful hippie values. But in a very real way, the business world is like love and friendship in that the more you give, the more you get. And the more value you create, the more money you will get paid. Okay. On this, but a lot of people think about business until they get a heart attack. Where's the mountain? And it's very important to understand that your most important asset is yourself. It is an important business principle. Not just a hippie love joy thing, but it is an important business principle to take care of yourself, to take care of your body, your mind, and even your soul, if you will. Chicken soup for the soul. Take care of yourself. And when you do that, you enable yourself to pursue excellence. And you should be excellent. However you define it, to whatever gifts you've been given, attributes, we can all strive for excellence. Excellent person we can be. And doing that will make all the difference. I'm not saying that you have to be a better computer programmer than Wozniak or whatever. We all have our specialties. But you should strive for excellence. And you should understand that you are your most important asset, and you should make the most of that asset. If you leave that asset sitting there on the couch watching TV, eating potato chips, and this is mentally as well as physically, that asset is going to underperform. And my final hippie thought of the day, don't worry, be happy. And I mean this very seriously. All of this comes to nothing, less than nothing. It will put you in the grave if you're doing all this and you're miserable. You have to find a way, you must find a way, please find a way to revolve all your business ideas, all your creative value creating ideas around something you enjoy, something that makes you happy. I know it's a cliche, but sometimes cliches are true. I truly, honestly believe, and I believe my own life is an example of the idea that if you do what you love, the money will come. And ever since I was a teenager, I wanted to be a writer. And I got married very young, and my wife said, no starving artist for you, get a real job. And that's how I ended up in restaurants. But at the end of the day, I did end up being a writer. And writing. I love storytelling. You can see I'm here telling stories today. And I get paid a lot of money for doing that. And to me, that's no surprise. I am good at what I do. I am excellent at what I do. In fact, I'm experts at what I do, which is fairly narrow, storytelling about rocks. But I'm good at it, and I enjoy it. I am happy. I get up every day, I think about, what am I going to do? I get up before my alarm this morning, thinking about, what am I going to say to you? I love what I do. And it's perfectly, this is not an accident. I'm just not a lucky person. I make money because I do something I love at it. So, be excellent, be happy, and aim high. Shift happens. You need to shift your thinking upwards. If anybody has ever gone to an archery range and shot an arrow at a target, if you aim at the target, the arrow will fall down because of gravity and you won't hit it. It'll fall low. You have to aim above the target, and you have to learn how much above, but you have to aim above the target to hit the target. This is a metaphor. To me, the clearest example of this, I got paid as a professional writer. I love this story, very short story. I wrote a letter to the editor, and it went in the newspaper, and I was angry about something political, and somebody with similar political ideas, who was an editor of a magazine, read my letter to the editor in the newspaper, and he liked it. And he said, oh, that's really great. Could you write an article for my magazine? I said, fine, I'll write an article for your magazine. Article for the magazine. And he said, well, could you do this more often? I said, well, I'd be happy to if you paid me. He said, well, how much do you want? And this was some years ago. The dinosaurs were extinct by this time, but not by long. So the amount of money that I needed to really feel well paid wasn't that much in today's dollar terms. But I figured the amount of time that it put in, I wanted to make $25 an hour. That seemed like a lot of money to me at the time. And it might take me 3 hours to write one of these articles. $75 an article would be a good price. So I aimed high. I said, I think I need $150 to write these articles. And I thought we would negotiate, maybe get lucky, get $100 an article. If I had to, I'd settle for my target of $75. Worst came to worst, I wanted to get paid as a writer. I would have taken $25 to do it. Didn't tell him that. I said, I need $150 to write these articles. I'm busy. He said, okay. That was it. I aimed high, and I didn't just hit the target. I got twice my target, just for trying. So shift your thinking upwards. This is a true story. Anybody can do this. I was just one of our star former students who will be here shortly to share information with us about a business offer that he's got. And we were just discussing it, and he was saying, well, they didn't really offer as much as I want. And I reminded him, I said, well, I would ask for twice as much as you want. And yesterday we were talking around dinner, he was telling everybody a story. He says he's going to ask for 4 times as much as and see what happens. So shift your thinking upwards. This will reward you. And don't be afraid. What's the say no? If my guy who bought my article had said no to me, or I could have negotiated downward if he didn't buy it. I was no soft than before. Fine, it's not my idea, but I really like it. I mentioned the path of least resistance being the road to mediocrity in my talk yesterday. I like this one. It says, someone once told me not to bite off more than I can chew. And I said, I'd rather choke on greatness than nibble on mediocrity. I don't know, postcards somewhere, but I like that. But don't choke. Okay, so this all boils down to an idea that is, again, not mine. I'm perfectly happy to take great ideas when I find them. This is a saying we have in the mining business: go big or go home. And the reason why we say this is because if you have a little mine somewhere, you still have to get environmental permits, you still have to find investors, you still have to satisfy the regulators, you still have to have a plan, you have to get a bank loan, you have to buy the equipment. You have to do all the same steps that you have to do for a bigger, but it's a little one. And even if it works well, you're not going to make that much money on it. So if you're going to bother doing all this stuff, you should do it on a scale. There's that word again, scale. You should do it on a scale that matters. Go big, think big, try for big ideas, or don't bother. Now, take that with a grain of salt, but this is an important idea. You can think in terms of big ideas. Everybody can. Scale is everything. If you remember my hierarchy at the beginning, if you get to the top, if you want to generate, if you remember my story about example of the cafe in a Chinese village somewhere, it's not scalable. Scale is the key to big money. So another idea that I'll borrow from a friend, add zeros to your thinking. The business plan that I wrote for the magazine I talked about yesterday was a $10,000 business plan. It had all the same parts and pieces that I see on $1 million or even billion-dollar business plans. Okay, it was thinner, but all the pieces were there. And you don't have to think small. If you have a good enough idea, the money will be there. Because there's a lot of money in the world, and it doesn't want to just be sitting around, you know, gathering dust. Money wants to be deployed. This is metaphorical. Okay, they want more of it. Money wants to be deployed to create more money. So if you have an idea that's good enough, you can find the money. The Papavova story, the Mir story, these are stories of people who had ideas, had intellectual capital, but they didn't have any money to implement them. So you can't money if the idea is good enough. Is that you should do something that matters. Possibly come up with a really good business plan and some new narcotic that was really devastatingly addictive and destructive. I wouldn't recommend that. Legal. But because at the end of the day, you're probably not adding value to the world. And it's likely that this path will lead to further unhappiness. If you're not creating real value, you expect great. You might be able to sneak, steal, cheat, slide your way into some kind of temporary wealth, but I don't think this leads to happiness in the end. And this is how people like Muammar Gaddafi end up in the grisly, bloody death that they have. They use force, they cheat, they steal. They're not really adding value to the world. They may feel like king of the world for a day, but it doesn't lead to a happy ending. So, wrapping up, this is very simple. You know, what is good business? Good business adds scalable, meaningful value to the world. And the more value you create, the more people you help, the more the reward you know, if you do something simple like, okay, you power people's cars, you get their children to school on time, you get them to work on time, you create so much value in their day-to-day life. They will voluntarily open their wallets and give you money in exchange. And it's scalable. So many people can use this value, even if what you make from each one is small. The flood of money that comes back to you as this creator of value is enormous. And that is just. It's not luck, it's justice. You have created value, you have shared it, you have given it to the world, and it should give you something back. So that's what makes for good business. And think big, and go big or go home, be successful. Thank you much. Okay, questions? Yes.
First of all, thank you for the presentation. It was a very nice meeting. The first question, I have two questions. The first one, going back to the pyramid, where's the owner first stage? Why do you think that so many people prefer working in a regular job, especially younger people, even when they know that being, for example, an investor can offer them more independent life, like freedom of choice.
Yes.
Yeah, but they prefer this kind of probably have a wife who says to them, "You find a real job." But and the second question about scalable business. So
actually, hold on. Let's do one at a time so I can keep them in my head. So the first question is, you know, why do people these ideas? Maybe the hierarchy is kind of obvious. People have all heard of investors. They know they exist. Why do people, especially young people, not start out that way? Think that way. Why do they think I have to get a job? That's my starting point.
Even in business schools, people prefer to spend lots of time writing their CVs, even when they can spend this 2 years or 3 years of their time, like looking for opportunities, doing something.
Very good. So Sergey here is adding that when you're working on their CV to perfect it to get their job, where they could be spending that time looking for opportunities. So in some ways, you're kind of answering your own question, but I think what you just said about business school, I mean, remember the first slide I said, what they don't teach you in business school. I don't know why these ideas are not as they could be. It's very obvious. To some degree, I'm not surprised. Nobody taught me these things. I had to figure them out. Even when I read Kiyosaki or some of these other guys, I was already this way. Based and experience takes time to accumulate. And in a way, all of what we're doing here in Cycle can be seen as me trying to take the experience I got after 20 years of hitting my head against walls, before you have to hit your head against those walls. And it's not taught, it's not valued, and there is this issue of people thinking money is bad or business is money grubbing. There are cultural cliches, and I think the question may not even make sense to somebody sitting in China right now, because I think in China the attitude about money is very different. Money is not bad in China. Business is not bad in China. I think a lot of people in China have a much more entrepreneurial spirit just to begin with, because it's part of their culture. So why don't young people think this way? In places where they're not taught that, they're not taught that. Sorry, just real quick digression on this China thing, because I love this. I was at a meeting with high ministry types mining, in China, and this was at the very beginning in the mid-2000s, when China was just opening up its mineral resources to foreign investors. And I sat there with the minister, and being the obnoxious person I am, I told him, I said, "Oh, this is great, I'm very excited, but China's a communist country. Why are you inviting these foreign capitalists to come and exploit your natural resources?" And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, this is no problem, it's no problem. In China, we have market communism now." Market communism? What's that? And then I said, okay, well, that's great, but what about the institutions of capitalism? The depth of markets and the lending, the transparency, all these things. How is this all going to work? And this is the point of the story, and then the answer to the cultural answer to your question. He looked at me and he says, "Oh, it's no problem, it's no problem. In China, we have 50-year communism, but we have 5,000-year capitalism." He was exactly right. Chinese don't need to be taught about capitalism, just exudes it. And I think that's a wonder. They have other challenges, but they don't have this one that you're bringing up. Okay, question number 2.
About scales, you said the scale is everything, and if I'm talking about this example of Chinese restaurant, a small city, do you think that we should skip opportunities? Because probably from my point of view, if you really invest your time and probably money in these projects, even into these small restaurants, Chinese style, at some point it can show you more opportunities, even in this small location. Or probably can develop a brand or something. Should we skip or should we?
Well, no, that's a good point. And again, we're simplifying things to condense some essentials into 1 hour of time. So the question is scalability. If you have an idea that looks profitable but isn't immediately scalable, should you skip it? No, not necessarily. If you have a choice of ideas and one is easily scalable, say it's an intellectual property idea, that's infinitely scalable at almost zero cost, right? That's a beautiful thing for business, in my view. But if you don't have that, and you do have a great idea for a small business, that's not a bad thing. And if it is really a good idea and it's profitable, you'll make more money starting that small business than you would working at McDonald's flipping hamburgers. So it's, again, remember, owner was higher than worker. So if you have a good idea for being an owner of a small business, you can use that to accumulate for your next day. And you're right, if the business is really successful, you might be able to replicate it. If it's a restaurant, this cafe in a Chinese village, you can open branches in other Chinese villages. But remember what I said, multiplication is more powerful than addition. So if you have a really neat small business, maybe you can add some more. Maybe it's only limited in appeal to a certain area or something. It's much better if you can multiply. And if you can infinitely scale it with intellectual products, software stuff, and not everybody is going to be an IT person. I get that. But I'm just saying, as an example, a service that you can replicate, multiply infinitely, it's just an exponential wealth creation machine. And by the way, if you're not an IT person, they have thousands of them, hundreds of thousands of them in India that will happily write you whatever program you want if you've got the idea. So you could be a hair designer in a beauty salon and have a creative idea for an app. You don't have to be a programmer. You can hire that. What you need is the idea. And if your idea is that good, boom, you could be an IT billionaire. Okay, more questions?
Maybe not a question, but a remark. It seems to be interesting how the government works, because this hierarchy that's this page you showed, which was the worker at the bottom, then comes the owner, investor, and speculator. During the Soviet times, it was quite the opposite, you know. The speculator, it was not just punishable by prison, yeah, it was also the community was offended you, like you're a speculator.
Yes.
It's too bad. It's too bad. Then comes the owner. It was forbidden to be the owner of the business. Yeah, and the workers, they were praised.
Yes.
Yeah,
Well,
it's just you turn it down like that, and it seems to be interesting how.
Well, I think the comment is that my hierarchy is basically the exact opposite of how things were in Soviet times,
Yeah.
where the speculator was the most evil criminal, punishable by jail and so on. The owner, that was illegal too, but not as bad. And the workers were at the top of the social thing. Well, they were, maybe that's why the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore, would be my answer. But also, I would also have to call bullshit on that. The Soviets said the worker was on top. He wasn't, or she wasn't. It was the apparatchiks, the people in the party, the leaders, who they got the limousines because they were important as the deputies of the workers, of course, all for the good of everybody else. But they got the caviar, they got the same, you know, penthouses in Moscow that the capitalists used to have that they stole. It was bullshit. Anyway, so yeah, interesting point. Do we have any questions from online, Grace?
I'm just getting online, so we need to.
Oh, okay, no worries.
You may want to mention that. Okay.
Yes, we did have technical. So if you sent some questions before, it's possible we didn't. If you want to type them into the chat window, we can try to address them now. And
I'm reading.
let me say something else about speculators. I was in Ecuador, actually, and I was on a mountainside where there was potentially some gold and silver veins under the mountain. And the company I was with, the geologists were there, and so on. We're hiking around. We come across the farmer who lived there. And he looked like Juan Valdez, right? You know, he had the white homespun suit and his straw hat. He didn't have the donkey. He wasn't picking coffee, but he looked just like him. And we were talking about what we were doing, and somehow this topic of speculator came up. And he's like, "Oh, speculator, those are bad people." Right? I don't remember exactly what he said. It was in Spanish, but the word came up, and he almost physically recoiled from me when I told him I was a speculator. Like you know, I might be contagious or something. And I said to him, "Well, you know, I know that there have been people who've been, say, land speculators and have blocked up the land and prevented it from being in productive use in this country, and I understand that problem. But understand what I'm saying. I'm investing potentially in this project before there's a mine. Of course it's speculation. Nobody knows if this is how much gold there might be here. There might be very little. It's not worth it. I'm being asked to put my money in now to find out if this might be a good business. Of course that's speculation. Is that bad? Well, no, it's not bad. And I said to him, you know, you're the landowner here. When you have a deal with this company, they are going to give you options, shares in this company, little pieces of ownership in the company. If you understand that, yes, I understand. He wasn't stupid. Okay, so if right now there's nothing, and later the company finds something worth mining and builds a mine, it'll be worth millions. Your pieces of ownership, your pieces of paper right now will be worth nothing. And then they will go to being part of millions. Change, oh yeah, how is that? I said, that's speculation. You know, you're going to speculate on this company finding something of value here, and you're going to share your land with them. In exchange for that, you could make a whole bunch of money without farming any coffee at all. And you would deserve that because you take a chance. It's a risk. In the same way I, as investor, speculator, would risk my money, you're going to take a chance here. And you're going to let these people drill on your property and do all this stuff. And maybe you'll make a bunch of money. And if you do, you'll deserve it. You will be a successful speculator. And he completely changed. Then we started talking about stocks and options. He got very interested in the whole idea buy low, sell high, all this stuff. And, here he is in his Juan Valdez outfit, sitting there on a rock, chewing on a stem of grass, and we're talking about stock options on the New York Stock Exchange.
No questions, but I have one.
Okay.
Or at least RJ's thinking. So if you're thinking you have an idea, where would people go if they're a little daunted about writing a business plan for resources on how to write a business plan and to give them a framework?
They would go to Papa Lobo's Business Plans 101 lecture, coming shortly to a screen near you. But other than that, we will talk about business plans. But the first thing I think is actually the daunted question. You can do this. Anybody can do this. When I wrote my first business plan for the magazine that I started that I mentioned in my talk yesterday, I downloaded a template from online. I typed into Google, or it might have been a predecessor at this time. The dinosaurs were dead, I promise. I typed in free business plan template into whatever search engine I was, and I downloaded something and I said, oh, okay, and I started filling in the pieces. But so there are resources out there. In today's world, you could probably find 27 YouTubes that show you how to step-by-step download, fill out, walk through, and so on. The main thing is actually the attitude thing of I'm going to be serious about my idea, and I'm going to write a business plan. I have received business plans where people downloaded the template and it says, put your business name here. And the person didn't erase the put your business name here. They just put their business name under the put your business name here. From my previous slide today about, be professional. I mean, come on, you're laughing, but this actually happened. And I won't name names, but it's a former student of mine here. And, they were basically lazy. I don't know if they felt like they wouldn't get a red diploma if they didn't do what I said, but they would have been better off staying home than submitting an idea like that. Because nobody's going to read it. Nobody's going to go anywhere. Did we have a?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so RJ Miller asks, given organizations like Arcade City, which are basically peer-to-peer organizations, is the distinction between business owner / employee going to in the years to come?
That's yes. So the question is a futurist question. We have blockchain technology, Bitcoin, Ethereum, new business, not just business models, but maybe even whole new business paradigms taking shape now. And the business of the industrial era is obviously going away. What will be in the future? Will the distinctions that I've made between owner, investor, speculator, worker go away in the future? I think an argument can be made that that's likely to happen. It's not going to happen tomorrow for most people. And when these things do happen, I'm not arrogant enough to say I know exactly what shape it's going to take, and therefore here's your best plan. Here's how you prepare for that. What I would say is that what I said about creating value and exchanging that and adding value to whatever system you're participating in, I think that's universal. And whatever forms it takes, that will still be true. And so if your psychology, if your way of being is one of creating value and offering that to the marketplace in one way or another, that will serve you well in whatever environment. But to address the thing directly, I think that's really kind of exciting. I mean, the whole idea of being a corporation man, the goal used to be to get a job with IBM or some big company like that, Exxon, and then you'd be set for life and you could retire and everything would be great. That just doesn't exist anymore. I mean, the General Motors filed for bankruptcy. The biggest companies in the world are right now. I think you've got it because you've got a good job, big company. You're taking a huge risk. You're exposing yourself unknown in the future. Whereas if you join the sort of information age, entrepreneurial, just almost chaotic, thriving environment, the new business world, yes, you're taking on more chaos now, you're taking on the unknown now, but you'll be better prepared to deal with the changes that come in the future. And I think this is exciting because it makes people sort of be owner, investor, and worker all at once sometimes, right at the get-go. And that's a good thing to be. It's It's a collapsing of the pyramid into direct intellectual capital to financial capital. I think it's exciting. I like it. Yes, sir.
Is speculator is a seller?
So speculator or seller. Okay, so thank you for smacking me upside the head with my assumptions. I'm assuming everybody knows what a speculator is, and I shouldn't. And we just discussed some of the wrong ideas about speculators, so let me try to offer a clear definition, or distinction, if you will. A speculator is obviously a kind of investor. But what an investor does is he deploys or she deploys capital into the expectation of return on that capital. It's putting your money to work. What a speculator does, you still invest, but you're looking for changes in value. You're not just investing in the business and waiting for the return on investment that the shoe factory makes every year, or a better year, yay, the return is up. These are small value adds compared to what the speculator goes after. What the speculator says is passed a law banning certain kind of firearms, for example, assault rifle ban in California. The price of those weapons is going to go up. So a speculator might go out and buy up a bunch of these weapons and then sell them outside of California because everybody's afraid that there will be more scarcity. What the speculator does is looks for changes in value, predicts them. The speculation comes in that you don't know that this will actually happen. You don't know. Nobody ever knows that price will go up. You have reasons to think it should go up. It might go up. But you don't know. So you take a chance. And there are a lot of things like this. And the concept is sometimes, as a speculator, you can see something that's undervalued, like the market doesn't like it. Markets, economists will teach you all these equations and how to gauge the markets, measure the markets, and economists often like to imagine that markets are like this big machine, and if the levers could be set just perfectly right, everything would run smoothly. But it's not true. It's not the way markets are, and they are often irrational. And investors get excited about things and they chase prices up higher than they are objectively worth. What is Tesla's PE ratio right now? Or they get panicked out and they sell things way low. And a speculator can say, look, in my world, for example, sometimes mining companies, just people hate mining, and there's prices of copper say go down, and the copper companies, their prices go way down. But the world can never do without copper. I mean, as long as we're going to use electricity, we're going to need copper. And if the price of copper goes down to below what it costs to mine it, something has to change. Either there will be no more copper, or the price will go up. Has to be one or the other. So a speculator looks at that and says, wow, well, the world's not going to stop turning lights on, so copper has to go up. It's not up now, but I'm going to buy low and wait for it to be high. That's what a speculator does. And doesn't have to be mining. That's my world. But that's just an example. Did you have any?
Yes, I have a question about speculations. Again, you said that it's not speculators who distort the economy sometimes, but it's government regulations which do. But sometimes big speculations in history, they really lead to big shakes of the economy, like tulips, fever, how it's called.
Right, yes, the Dutch disease.
The Dutch disease, yes. And in this case, speculators, they don't see what is undervalued. They see they overvalue something, right? So in some cases, it seems that speculation can be quite damaging for the society.
Okay, so I'd say two things. One is if a market goes the other, you can always bet opposed to that. So if you think the market, so the gentleman brought up the example of Dutch disease, the tulip mania in the 1600s, where people were paying, thousands of gold pieces for a single tulip bulb, and then there was a big crash, and that, maybe speculation in some cases can be harmful. So what I'm saying, two answers to that. One is, for every long there is a short. In every market, for every transaction, if you're buying something, somebody's selling it. So if you bought a tulip bulb in 1603 for 10,000 crowns or whatever it was, somebody got those 10,000 crowns. They didn't stop existing. You got a tulip bulb. And if you think the price of tulips is over, you can short that market. There's lots of ways to play this. And what I'm saying is, these speculators that took all this value about chasing this price up, there's other people that had the other side of that equation. The money was still, the value of the tulips disappeared, and some businesses were destroyed. But the money was still there, the buildings were still there, the tulip bulbs were still there. Right? So I don't think that kind of speculative mania, and they do happen, I don't think that kind of speculative mania is wholly destructive of economies in the same way that, say, inflating the currency at a high rate is, or imposing economy-wide laws that put people out of business or distort the business. Governments have a uniquely powerful position now to not just affect one business or one company, but everybody in the whole country, because they've taken over the business of creating currency units and outlawing private competition in that sector. It's given them huge power. So, yeah, a big speculation can cause some distortion in some local markets, but that's nothing compared to the power of government to really screw things up. Did we have another question from online, Grace?
No, just some comments. I don't know if you-
Well, if they're worth sharing,
Comment from one engaging online person is smugglers are often one and the same.
Smugglers are often one and the same. Well, Doug Casey is working on a series of novels. And the first one is called Speculator, and it's a hierarchy. And the second one, I think, is called Drug Lord. And then I think it goes to Warlord, and then it goes to, I don't remember, I think it ends up in Antichrist. It's the final book in the series that he has planned. Yeah, if you think about it, what is smuggling? Smuggling is a market response to government regulations that create unmet needs. So I don't really think of this as speculation. I mean, the speculative part of that is that you might get caught and thrown in jail. But the government, by making something that people want illegal or expensive, is actually guaranteeing your profits. As the business goes, that's not speculative at all. That's shooting fish in a barrel. Yeah, right. That's about as easy as it gets. The problem there is the bullets that you might intercept you on your way to the bank while you're laughing at all your profits and so on. So we're actually we're well through the discussion time, but it is theoretically discussion time. Does anybody have any question, any comments, anything you want to share with the group? No, that's fine. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen online. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen in person. You know where to reach me. Send me your questions, feedback. Look forward to next talk. And remember, everybody online, you need to click on the next link. Each talk, next up is Edmundas, Eddie. And we're looking forward to his workshop, but you have to click on the next link to be able to watch Eddie's presentation online. That's it. Thank you very much. We're just waiting for the song to come out of the guitar. It still says live.
Yeah.